Hello everyone, I'm Jeongcheol. Linux cluster on CentOS 6 and 7, Chapter 9, Quorum and Quorum Disk. Main topics. This chapter will cover this kind of topics. So, cluster quorum introduction and quorum commands, and the quorum disk introduction, quorum disk configuration, and the last the topic will be scoring and heuristics of quorum. Okay, cluster quorum definition. So the quorum means the voting the algorithm is a kind of algorithm to handle spilled brain conditions. So to maintain the cluster system, normally we have to handle the quorum. So what is spilled brain condition? It means where two instances of the same cluster are running and which allow each cluster instance to access cluster resource, but problem is that these two instances didn't know each other cluster instances. So by this kind of situation, resulting in corrupted cluster integrity. So if the spilled brain conditions happen, it means normally the cluster data integrity can be corrupted. So using quorum, we have to protect our system from spilled brain condition. The cluster and applications are only able to work with exact quorum. So the cluster has exact the quorum, no problem to use the applications, this one. And all nodes in the cluster have a default baud. So even if you don't configure about the baud for each node, maybe the all node will have default baud. And the total baud means what all cluster nodes have baud. So I already told you each cluster has the default baud, and total baud means it's the sum the sum of all these cluster baud. And the expected baud means the total baud values initial baud can be modified. So to configure the cluster quorum, we have to know here default baud, total baud, and expected baud. So normally quorum come from the expected baud. So anytime according to our situation, we can modify expected baud using the tools. And the quorum here is calculated from expected baud, the value, and the sum of the current node bauds must be greater than half of the expected baud in order that the quorum is achieved and cluster is working. It means, for example, here, now current expected baud is the total 10. In this case, the sum of current baud must be greater than 6. In this case, we can meet the quorum and our cluster is working well. If the sum of current baud is less than 6, then our cluster will show the error messages. But the two-node cluster, in this case, this is a special and exceptional case because only there are two nodes with, for example, like two baud, and one baud, maybe one node has the quorum, then only baud number only one is left. In this case, we cannot consist of or run the clustering system. So two-node cluster is a special case. Cluster quorum examples here. Normally, total expected baud divide 2 and plus 1. For example, here we have the 6-node cluster, 2 node 10 baud each, then total 20 baud, and the 4 nodes, the 1 baud per each one, then total 4. So total baud will be the 24 bauds. Here, required quorum is 13 baud. According to this formula, 24 total divide 2 plus 1. Number 3, two-node case is a special and the quorum is disabled in two-node mode. I already told you the two-node clustering is a special case and exceptional case. So in two-node case, quorum is disabled in the two-node mode. For example, to configure this kind of things, we can use like this. CCS node 1 set the cman two node enabled and expected both only one. Then this one, we can see this kind of line here, etc cluster com two node enabled and expected both only one. Quorum commands, the number of votes assigned to each node can be modified. I already told you. So if we want to modify this kind of the quorum or the vote, then we can use Lucy or modify cluster configuration file. This one, etc cluster com using cman and CCS manually. For example, if we want to modify for example, expected vote using cman or CCS, for example, here, cman tool expected vote -e vote number. So here we can define, for example, like a 5 or 4, like this. And after that, we can need to the quorum set the quorum device using this command set quorum D, and here we can define the options, and we can give exact vote to quorum disk, in this case vote number 1. And if we want to use a cman tool vote -v vote number, then we can increase the vote of this current node. If you want to see the voting information, then we can use cman tool status and the CCS tool ls node. Quorum disk. Quorum disk means this is a kind of the one part of the solution, especially two-node cluster fencing the races and maintain the cluster. So maybe I already told you, in case of the two-node cluster, we cannot use the quorum. So if we want to use this kind of quorum in the especially two-node cluster, we need to use the quorum disk. We normally say Q disk. Normally, this kind of quorum disk in the two-node cluster, we say the tiebreaker, because two-node has two the same both number. So if one node is shut down and cannot supply some service to cluster client, then there is only one. So in this case, the quorum only one. So we need the tiebreaker in this kind of situation. So tiebreaker means additional the heuristics, and maybe next page I will explain this one. Additional heuristics to allow cluster partition to decide whether or not it is the correct in the event of the even the split prior to the fencing. It means maybe in two-node cluster, using the quorum disk, we can decide correct in the event of even split if this kind of situation happen. So if we use this one, we can protect the fencing. Maybe if the two-node cluster fail to use the eject or the get eject quorum, then maybe the fencing will happen. And this kind of quorum disk appear like a voting node with vote number to the cman. So cman will check the total voting numbers and the quorum. So maybe if we have the quorum disk, we eject the vote number anytime we can maintain our clustering service in two-node cluster environment. Allow the flexibility in number of cluster nodes required to maintain quorum. So even if regardless of the number of the failed cluster node, we can maintain our clustering system using quorum disk. So to use a quorum disk, at first time we need to create Q disk using shared storage. And when we create this kind of quorum disk, minimum size is 10 megabyte. And the daemon queue disk done on each node, so we have the disk daemon must be started, and does it one hard beating to the shared disk, and this kind of daemon will communicate to this kind of the shared storage with the heartbeat. And this heartbeat is independent of cluster heartbeat. Cluster also using heartbeat for communication between each cluster node. And a wide variety of heuristics to determine which node wins the tie or if quorum is maintained. So about the heuristics, maybe next page I will explain. And to use Quorum Disk, we need to install the cman package. Quorum Disk and Quorum Disk communication and the configuration. So Quorum Disk normally use cman. Cman normally advertise the Quorum device availability or heuristics the result. CCS obtain the configuration information, especially here etc/cluster/cluster.com. And the shared storage, normally this one supply the Quorum Disk and check and record the state. Quorum Disk configuration, we can use Conga as a GUI and etc cluster/cluster.com using the manually. Requirement: cluster node ID should be the number sequentially up to 60 in cluster.conf. So maybe if we use Quorum Disk, normally this one will support up to the 60. Total number of bots assigned to Quorum Disk is recommended to set total bot of node -1 by default. For example, our total score is 6. Then maybe the quorum in the Quorum Disk must be, or it will be the 5 like this. How to start the Quorum Disk? Before we start the Quorum Disk, cluster also must have the quorum eject quorum. And to use Quorum Disk, we need the cman and clvmd. This one must be the running before we start the Quorum Disk. Quorum and Quorum Disk here. So I already told you each node, in my case node 3, has the boat here, and this kind of boat number will be controlled by the Q, this one, disk D, Q disk D, Q disk D. And this kind of the Quorum Disk daemon will be controlled by the cman. And the cman control manager, the cluster manager also will communicate with each the cluster. And between the Quorum Disk daemon here and this one, Quorum Disk normally use what? Heartbeat. And between Quorum Disk and Quorum Disk daemon and the Quorum Disk will use the heartbeat to check their current status. And in this case here, Quorum Disk is both 2, and the total the other nodes, the total the both of the node is 3. So here Quorum Disk boat number 2. In this case, we can say like this: total boat is 5, here is 3, and both the Quorum Disk boat 2, and expected boat 5 also. In this case, we need the quorum 3. So in this case, in the cluster with the 3 node, even if node 1 and node 2 failed as a cluster member 1 node, but if we use this clustering service with only node 1 node, because here Quorum Disk has a boat number 2 and this one node boat number 1, so total will be the quorum will be the 3, so no problem to maintain this clustering service only with one cluster node. Scoring and the heuristics. So when we configure the Quorum Disk, normally we need to configure heuristics. So what is the heuristics? This is a kind of test. A node has to perform successfully before connecting to Quorum Disk. So each class node needs to connect to this Quorum Disk to bring exact boat number. So before connecting to this kind of Quorum Disk, maybe also this kind of cluster node need to perform some test. Normally we say this kind of test is a heuristics. And using heuristics, this one can help determine node fitness as a cluster node beyond what cluster heartbeat provide. So using the heuristics, this one allow quorum decision. So if the heuristics is successful, then no problem to bring the exact boot number from the quorum disk, and the quorum the boot number will help to consist of quorum decision to be made based on the external cluster independent test to access quorum disk boot. So after maybe accessing the quorum disk boot by the node, they will bring the exact boot number from quorum disk and consist of the exact quorum for quorum decision. Any command executable by the SHC, the command providing true or the false the result. So when we consist of the heuristics, normally we use this kind of some program. This program, from this program, we will get true or false result. If the heuristic fails and the node lose the quorum boot, maybe if the heuristic fails, then node will lose the quorum boot from quorum disk, then fencing will get started by cluster manager. So cluster manager will check this kind of quorum from cluster node and quorum disk. According to the result from especially the quorum disk, the fencing will be proceed. And we can configure up to 10 arbitrary heuristics, and the node must score greater than half of total maximum score to be available via quorum.disk. So maybe if the eject node get this kind of score, then they can access quorum disk. For example, heuristic here program, in my case I will use the ping C1 count number 10111. When we define this kind of IP address, maybe I'll recommend you to use your gateway IP address, because normally gateway is always must be alive. So, and after that, if this test is successful, then get the score 1 and interval 2 TKO 3. So interval mean per 2 seconds, maybe the command will be implemented, and the TKO 3, TKO mean time to knock out. Maybe so total 6 seconds. So interval 2 TKO mean the 3 times or 3 circles. Total the 6 seconds is a fail to send the ping to this IP address. Then the node will lose this kind of quorum boot, and the cluster manager will check total quorum, and if that fail, then this kind of node will get the fencing from cluster manager. Okay, this is an example of the two-node cluster. Okay, here, if you see this file, so if we want to configure two-node cluster with one IP tie the breaker. So at first time, two node, this one must be disabled, and in case of the two node, the cluster expected boot was only 1. But if we use the IP tie the breaker for two node cluster, expected boot must be 3. For example, here, node 1, boot 1, node 2, boot 1, so 2, and here, quorum disk also will have the boot number like this, so total must be 3. And before we use this kind of heuristics, we have to create this kind of quorum disk first. So here, this is I told you this is one. Normally, I recommend you to use as a gateway IP address, and the score 1, interval 2, and 3 like this. Okay, now the quorum disk configuration. First one, step 1, we need to create the quorum disk. So in this case, we can use this command mk qdisk c, and after c we have to define exact the device. In my case, TV mapper 1 IET 001 the partition number 3 will be this disk, and the label, the name is my qdisk like this. If we want to visit the quorum disk, then we can use like this mk-qdisk-l. Get the information on quorum disk. Then if we start the cman again, then we can see this kind of daemon qdisk d. And ck config the cman on. And if you want to see the information also, then mk-qdisk-f and label, in my case, my qdisk. If we want to know or get the information about the quorum, exact quorum disk and quorum, then we can use cman tool, status, and cluster status. Step 4, configure the system for using quorum disk. So CCS, H, node 1, and so quorum disk. Okay, here, label, I already told you my label will be my qdisk, and both number and minimum score like this. And after that, the heuristics here, add the heuristic, the program, ping. In my case, I will use 10.1.2.1 as a gateway for the interface, network interface, C1W1, the option. And then this maybe, if this the program is successful, then this one will get the score 1. And then each node can get the exact baud. In my case, this one will be baud number 1. And the option like interval 2, TKO 3, so interval per 2 seconds, maybe this one will be implemented. And the TKO time to knock out. So if total 6 seconds is failed to send this kind of the command, then each node will fail to get the quorum disk baud. Step 6, here list. If we want to see the information about the disk quorum disk option heuristics, then node 1 ls the quorum cman tool status ccs tool ls node like this. If we want to remove the heuristics, then here rm heuristic program option like this. And after we consist of this kind of cluster, step 8, we need to test the quorum using quorum disk. So here, chapter 9, the lab. In this chapter, I will show you how to configure quorum disk using CCS and Conga. So, chapter 4, this kind of lab, here there are the requirements. First one, set up 2 cluster node and 1 IP type the breaker, because normally quorum disk can be used for 2 node the cluster system. And create 100 megabyte quorum partition name. In my case, I will use this one, mapper 1001, the partition number 3. And this one will be the label my qdisk and baud number 1. And a node must have the minimum score of 1. I already explained this one to consider itself alive. Then maybe if the node get this kind of the score, then normally the cluster manager will think this one node is alive. The node should be the advertised additional baud to the cluster manager when each heuristic is successful. Heuristic is successful, then each node advertise they get additional baud from quorum disk to whom? To cluster manager. Number 5, add a heuristic, the ping. In my case, I will use this one, IP address 10.1.2.1 every 2 seconds, and report the failure if it's unsuccessful after 3 cycles, means the 3 times. And this failure causing the node to lose the quorum baud. The heuristic should have weight, or the score must be 1. And the cluster service must be running by adding quorum disk after 1 node lose baud. So this is a process for this rep requirement. Okay, now try to the test Quorum Disk. Okay, at first one, in my case, now I'm using the Conga with the two node. So node 1 and node 2, and each node now is working well. And the other daemons like Cman, RG Manager, LC, Board Cluster, CLVMD also is working well. Okay, node 2 also now the status, each daemon's state is working well. So first one, now here, node 1, okay, I will check here. First, cluster status. So now, two node and online RG Manager is a service. Now the web service is working on node 2 like this. And Cman tool status. Then let's check the node 2 node, and expected boot 1, total boot 2. Now quorum is 1. And if you see this file, we can see this kind of option. So expected boot 1, to node enabled, and no the quorum disk here. So now here, let's at first time the step 1, let's create the quorum disk. So in my case now I will show you the partitions. So now I will use the partition number 3. From now I have only 2. So at first time I have to create. So db mapper and 01, 001 like this, and p. Now I have 2 partitions. So here I will create new partition, and p primary partition, partition number 3, first cylinder enter, and the last cylinder 100 megabyte. Okay, p. Then I create this one, and then w. Okay, and after that path proof, and node 2 also. Okay, now I create the new partition. Let's check fdisk-l. Then I can see, okay, this one. So here we have to format this system. Okay, fs.ext4, and okay, now I create the partition for quorum disk. So now let's create, in my case, db mapper 01 p3, and label my Q disk. Yes, this one will destroy all data in this partition. So this cluster node support node 1 to node 16. Okay, now I create the quorum disk. So mkq disk, and then L. So now I can find this one, mapper, the partition number 3, and the label my Q disk, and with that, this kind of information. Okay, now I create the quorum disk, or now, but let's check Cman tool status. Even if I create the quorum disk, but in the information I cannot find exact information about the quorum disk. So now let's create also this one. Let's create the quorum disk and heuristics using Conga. Okay, here. So now I have the 2 node cluster, and if we go to the configure, so here we can find this contains quorum disk configuration. So do not use it. So now I don't use the quorum disk, but if I use the quorum disk. So when we specify the physical device, there are 2 types: by device label or the file system fast. In my case, if I use this one, db/mapper/1iet001/001p3, but I will use the device label. So my Q disk. And pass the program for the heuristics. So here I will use the ping, okay, here. So like this. But the IP address will be 2, okay, like this. 10.1.2.1. This means the IP address is a Windows IP address in my case, and interval 2 and the score 1 and the TKO 3, like this. And the minimum score 1. Okay, and have that apply. Okay, then so here I created the quorum disk on the Conga. So now quorum is a 2 and quorum device port 1, expected port 3, node 2. Node is the same, but now the quorum device. Okay, here quorum device is added. So now here let's open the configuration file for the configuration. So here now the expected both the 3 and the 2 node here now enabled. So in my case I will use like this. 2 node must be the disabled, like this. And here let's okay, let's add okay, in my case now I change like this. So here expected both 3 and 2 node is disabled, and after that my Q disk, this one will get the both 1, and the heuristics the interval 2 and TKO 3 like this. So and after that so now let's check that this kind of option. First one, CCS node 01. Okay, if we use this command CCS node 1 and ls quorum, then we can find this kind of option. So quorum daemon, the minimum score and the both 1, and the label the Q disk, this one, and the heuristic program is a ping C1 this IP address interval 2 tickets. So here let's testing the ping. So now it's successful, and the node 2 as well. Here ping 10.1.2.1. Okay, no problem. So now I tested the ls quorum and then cman tool status. So using this one, we have to check this one. Okay, so now this one 2 node and the expected both 3 and quorum device is 1. Total both is 3. 2 node and the quorum device both, and quorum now is 2. So we can find this one configuration button number, and 2 node is working well with exact both numbers. One more thing, after you started this kind of the quorum disk, you have to check this daemon is working on not. Okay, node 2 as well. This one. Okay, now also this one also is working well. So in the ref, I set up 2 cluster node and 1 IP type breaker, and I create the quorum, the disk with the name my Q disk. And the additional board now is a node is we need to test each node is getting additional board. Well, so I found this one. And number 5, the ping and the heuristics once every 2 seconds, and the report failure if it is the unsuccessful after 3 circles. So now we can test this one. So for the testing, I will disable the node 2. Then only node 1 is working. Even if there's only one node in the cluster, then clustering service will be continue to supply their service. So for the testing, okay, let's like this. In the node 1, let's check the log message, and after that, also this one, node 1. So now cman, we can find this kind of quorum 2, expect board, and this one. So for the testing, let's go to the node 2 and let's shut down the network interface. So in case of node 2 network interface, so this one 10.1.2.9, this one will send the ping to 10.1.2.1. So now if I shut down this one ETH2, then we can check the quorum disk testing here in using this log and this one. Okay, node 2, let's in my case, okay, disconnect. So now let's test ping 10.1.2.1. So I cannot. And in the manager, okay, let's check the log file. So we can see here, QDisk on node is report the harm. So now the reporting the failure in node 2. So then in the node 1, let's check this one, cementil the status. So now total boat here, total boat 3, node boat 1, expected boat, and quorum 2. So, and then here, let's the node 2, let's reboot this one. Then we will lose node 1 from node 2, the boat 1 from the node 2, then try to reboot. Okay, proceed. So now let's do node 2. Okay, now node 2 is rebooting. Okay, now node 1, okay, node only 1, in my case node number 1, only one node is working, but expected both 3, and but the quorum device is supplying this both 1, so quorum 2 is fit the consist of the clustering service. So even if the node in the 2-node cluster system, the one node in my case is node 2 is rebooting, but no problem to use the clustering service. So here cluster status. So now web service was at first time. This one web service is working node 2.churl.com, but now node 1 is supplying this web service, and this one offline. But the node 1 no problem to supply the clustering service to client. And here you can find this one online and Quorum Disk. Quorum Disk is working well as a part of the Quorum. So now node 2 is disabled in the clustering system. Only node 1 is working. So we cannot find any the daemon in node 2. So here we can find here QDisk D, node 2 is shut down. So only node 1 is supplying the service. So far I show you how to configure Quorum Disk with this kind of the requirement. Okay, so far I show you and explain the Quorum and Quorum Disk and how to configure Quorum Disk as well. So in chapter 9, you study the disk and things. It's a summary. What is a Quorum and Quorum Disk? And what is the spilled brain condition? And which tools can we use for Quorum configuration? And the sum of the current node both must be the greater than for quorum achievement. Please try to find the answer for this one. And the number 5, what we need to use quorum disk for. So why we have to use the quorum disk. And the number 6, which the three conditions do we need to start the quorum disk. For example, like how to create some partition like this. And which command can we use to create the quorum disk, and how can we check the exact quorum information using some command I already explained. Thanks for watching this video. God bless you and see you in next chapter.